everyone and welcome to another video with me, A320 SimPilot, where today we're going to look at how to use the autopilot in the A320 NEO in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I am a real-world Airbus pilot, so hopefully this can bring some extra context to your home simulations on Microsoft Flight Simulator, but of course none of this is for any real-world use, it's just for our use in Flight Simulator to get us some entertainment and hopefully see some of the differences between the two. I've just departed from Geneva, code LSGG, and we're at flight level 120. And what we're going to do is just have a go at climbing and descending and turning. So let's get started. Right, so here we are in the flight deck. As usual, I will compliment the graphics because it is exceptionally good. I am amazed at how well they recreated this flight deck in terms of the visuals. And we'll have a look at some of the automatic modes. First of all, we need to look at our primary flight display, our PFD, which is here. And as you can see, it's in these modes. So up here we have what are called a flight mode enunciators. These are our FMAs, which is what pilots would call them. And what they do is show us the modes that the automatics are following and what these flight director bars, these green lines, are doing for us and what they're trying to achieve. So what I can see is it says thrust climb, so I need to make sure that I have the climb gate. Now that would normally mean in the real aircraft that it's targeting a climb thrust, so that's wrong. Because we aren't at climb thrust, we are currently sitting at the thrust to target this speed because it's flying 320 knots. So that's actually definitely not true to the airplane, but that's what that was trying to say. So that shows us where what sort of speed mode we're flying, whether it's a climb thrust or a speed mode, and that's what the auto thrust will then do. Here we have alt. It's in alt, which means it's trying to maintain this altitude over here. Now I've set standard up here, which you do by pushing that. So there you go. If you push it in with a little arrow up, it goes QNH 1013 because I've set it to HPA by clicking that, because in Europe that's what we use, hectopascals. And then if I pull it towards me, which means if I move that little arrow so it's down, it pulls towards you and you set STD standard, and that means we are on a flight level of 120. So that's how you mix between the two. So that's staying out flight level 120, and that is fine. Nav mode tells me it's following this green line. Now this green line was already loaded into the flight plan in the MCDU, and I am going to do some videos on the MCDU if you guys would like to explain it a little bit. There's a lot of differences between the real aircraft, but some similarities that we can use. But so you can see that the green line, the green waypoint is 30, so these are the other waypoints on our route, and that is up here. So you know we're heading towards it. The Civ should be the next waypoint, which it is up here, CIV. So that's good. So we're on that green line there. So that was loaded in by Flight Simulator because I told it the route I was going to fly, which is quite a neat feature. I do like that. Makes it quite simple. So we're in nav mode, and that's what that's telling us. Over here I can see Autopilot 1 is engaged, which is great. That means that Autopilot 1, I can swap it over, Autopilot 2, and it does that thing where it shows you the white box because there's been a change, and it goes to AP2. So we're going to stay on Autopilot 1. Typically in the Airbus we fly with the autopilot at the side of pilot flying. So we take turns, and if it's the captain flying, then they will use Autopilot 1. So that is engaged up there. 1 FD2 means the flight directors are on. So that's this, FD. And we would always have those on if we're using the autopilot, and they are both on. In Microsoft Flight Simulator, they turn off together, which is quite handy. So you can see that now both of these are off, and both of them are on. If they're off, you get nothing in there. So we're going to have those on. We're using the autopilot, and that's what this video is about. And then auto thrust is white. If it was blue, it means it's armed, but because it's white, it means it's engaged. And I can see that here. A/THR, auto thrust, is engaged, and you get the green line. Now, it's important to note that to get this auto thrust to work, the thrust levers need to be somewhere from here to here. And as I reduce them, I limit the auto thrust, which is what these little donuts show me. So if I bring them back, the auto thrust can't use all of its range. And it seems to say speed mode. I mean, that's what it should have been in the first place. But if I put it to climb, which is where we leave it for most of the flight, basically you take off in a takeoff thrust, and then you put it to climb around about 1,000 or 1,500 feet above the runway. But that's where I'm going to leave it to make sure the automatics can use basically up to climb thrust to maintain the speed or whatever I ask it to. So there we go. To turn off the auto thrust, you can press that button, and then you'll see that you have control using your thrust levers, which moves these little circles called donuts, and we can adjust the thrust like a traditional aircraft. But now we're accelerating. So let's go ahead. I press that button to arm it, and then I need to put these in the climb gate it's called, and now it should target that speed again. Now, let's have a look at a climb. Let's climb to flight level 180. So how do I do that? Well, first of all, I'm going to wind it into this window, so 18,000 feet. And then I have a few options. In the real aircraft, I can use what's called managed climb, and that's here, engage managed altitude mode. And that would be, if I click now, the little arrow up, we push this altitude knob towards the airplane or away from you, and it will go into a mode where it will target the computed altitudes and climb gates. So if I push it in, it climb, and it should climb to flight level 180 with climb thrust. So we'll see the engines increase, and up it goes. Now, I've tried this in Microsoft Flight Simulator and it doesn't always work because it gets confused and tries to climb through the flight level. So let's see if that works. What you can also do is climb in open climb. So that would be selected altitude mode, where I pull it towards me. So the little arrow up, it's managed, and the little arrow down, it's selected. So if I do that, it should go open climb. In open climb, it will just climb at climb thrust at the speed I've got all the way up to that flight level. If I was to then change the speed, which I can do by pulling the speed towards me and then winding it up with the mouse wheel, the nose should lower and it will actually try and climb at whatever speed I've got set using climb thrust, because as you can see, it's only targeting thrust climb. So the thrust will stay the same and it will just try and climb using whatever speed I've given it. And if I now reduce that speed using the mouse wheel, the nose will raise as it tries to climb at 290 knots. Now, as we get close, and you're going to see a crazy rate of climb, that's too high. It's pretty unrealistic. But it should go into outstar mode. So you wouldn't want to be climbing this fast anywhere near this flight level. But let's see if it manages, just to see what the autopilot does. Outstar is a mode up here. So currently it's in climb, open climb. And there's outstar, which means it's going to capture this altitude or flight level in this case. So that has worked, which is good. And now we'll see it level off at flight level 180. That was my mistake. I've got the T-Flight HOTAS 4, and it constantly, if you move these thrust levers slightly, you get these different modes. So yeah, that's why that changed then. But still, outstar is working, and it's leveling off at flight level 180. So that is good. That's all worked. And selected speed has worked. So as you can see, by pulling it towards me, the little down arrow, I click that, I have control of the speed, and now I can wind it up and down as I need to. It should really say speed mode up here because that's the mode it's in now. It should say speed outstar. But there we go. So that is working. What I can also do is push it away from me, manage speed mode, and you can see that we get these dashes up here because the Airbus now is controlling that, and it's targeting 320 knots, which is fine. Great. So there you go. We've seen two different ways to climb, and we've had a look at changing the speed. Something else we want to look at is how do we navigate. So if we get given a heading by air traffic control, how do I know how to get to that? Well, at the moment we are in heading mode. Nav mode. It says nav up here, and I want to get it into a heading. So to do that, in the real aircraft, I would pull this switch. So put the arrow down and engaged selected. So you'll see a theme here that selected is when you have control, managed is when the Airbus has control. So pull that towards me and it goes into heading, and now it's in a selected heading mode. Now I can wind that round. So if I went to heading north 360 or 000 heading, and then see the little blue triangle here shows me that's the heading I'm targeting, and the heading mode up here tells me that's what the airplane's going to fly towards. And as it does that, we come round, hopefully, to heading north. How do I go back into nav mode? Now it's done that. Well, same principle. Put the little arrow up, push it towards the airplane, it goes into dashes, the airplane takes control, and we get nav mode up here. It's not enough to look up here, we need to see these. And that's why it frustrates me that this thrust climb is wrong, because it's not targeting thrust climb, it's targeting that speed. But there we go. And it goes back to CIV. So there you go, there's just a few ways to climb and turn the Airbus in Flight Simulator. Another thing we can do is climb in vertical speed. This is rare, but it might be a way to control your climb rate when you're near to a level off. So as you can see, we were climbing very fast. Within about 1,000 feet to go of your flight level or altitude, you want to have that climb reduced to something reasonable, maybe 1,000 feet per minute. So let's pretend that air traffic control has cleared us to climb further. So let's put flight level 230. And now I'm going to use vertical speed. Now in the real aircraft, I can select this like this, and then by using the mouse wheel, I can set the vertical speed and then pull, and it goes straight to it. But it doesn't work in Flight Simulator. So I'm going to use selected flight path angle vertical speed, engage vertical speed. So I'm going to pull that, and it goes VS 0. Now it should show that here as well, but it doesn't, so that's wrong. And now I can wind this up. So let's say 600 or 1,000 feet per minute, and then again I'm going to pull, and it goes VS 1000. So we can see that it's now going to target 1,000 feet per minute. Let's see if it does that. So it does, and now we're climbing. What is strange is because I've set 230 up here, this should say that. I don't know why it doesn't. This is very odd, and this is a little bit frustrating because we've set that up here. So this window should now say 23,000, and we would normally have an out blue mode. What happens if I pull that? And then it goes to open climb. Okay, so now what happens if I pull the vertical speed now? Then we get vertical speed. Okay, so in principle, you pull the vertical speed towards you and then set it. In the real aircraft, you can do that either way around, but once you pull it, you get take control. I'm just going to set this lower, and let's see if it levels off at flight level 200. No, it's still left at 230. Very odd. And if I go manage, it just goes to climb mode. So I'm not sure. The vertical speed mode seems pretty... Oh, there you go. It did level off there. But if I set that to 230, it should continue climbing in vertical speed, but it doesn't seem to have that ability. It would always just target whatever the last climb or open climb mode was set to. So yeah, so vertical speed is not that great at the moment. That's pretty bad, really. So let me think. The only way around this, I suppose, is to set, let's say we set flight level 230, we pull it, so we get open climb, and now I'm going to pull vertical speed and set a vertical speed, and that should then level up at 230. So let's see if it does that. So here we are now arriving within 1,000 feet of our level off. Just going to change that vertical speed, so I can just wind that down to, let's say, 1,000 feet per minute, VS 1000, and hopefully it will level off. But like I say, we would normally have an out armed mode, so an out written in blue underneath. But for some reason, it just doesn't seem to work in the vertical speed. So the vertical speed mode is very much, I'd say, broken at the moment in the Airbus. It's not at all how I would expect it to be, which is strange. It's so, it doesn't seem as if they've got open climb and so on working. There we go, out star. So it has captured, but it only worked because I already engaged another mode before engaging vertical speed, and that is not correct. The Airbus does not work like that. But there we go. Okay, so there are some climb modes. So let's have a look at descending. Before we descend, let's pretend we're in the cruise and air traffic control clear us to go direct to a waypoint, which does happen quite often in real life. So it's not always just headings. So I press the DIR, direct page, and they say direct to Lumen. And then I'm going to use this arrow to scroll through these waypoints to get to Lumen. The real aircraft wouldn't show you the ones you've already been past. It only shows you one of the old waypoints, but there we go. Select the little key next to Lumen, and it appears at the top, waypoint Lumen. And then you get direct to erase, which would just remove it, and it goes back to normal. Or we can select it again, Lumen, and then direct to insert. And now you get the yellow line, and then Lumen. And now Lumen is the waypoint we're flying towards. So if they were to clear us direct to LAMSO, we just do the same thing. LAMSO, check it up there, and you get the yellow line showing you what it's planning on doing, and then insert, and makes the right turn, and now LAMSO is the direct point. So that's good. That seems to be working a little bit nicer than the first time I tried. I don't know if they've changed anything, but there we go. So that is a way to use directs and heading. Of course, if you were in heading mode, you'd then need to re-engage managed mode by using the little up arrow until it goes into nav. Right, let's have a look at descending. So let's pretend we're cleared to descend down to flight level to 150. So I'm going to scroll it down to 150, and exactly the same as before, I can either pull selected altitude mode, in which case it should go open descent. So do that, and it goes into DES. Now that is not right. If I put the arrow away from me, DES. Okay, so when you pull, it should go open DES. It would just go to idle thrust, so that should again say thrust idle, not thrust climb. I don't know why it's insisting on saying that. Yeah, it's very strange. But it should go to idle thrust and descend down to flight level 150 at 320 knots in idle thrust. And if I then select the speed and wind the speed back, it should raise the nose. Because if we descend at a slower speed, we will have a lower rate of descent. There's less drag. The faster we're going, the higher that rate of descent at idle thrust will be. But that should say thrust idle open descent. So that this whole thrust FMA, it seems very odd to me. I'm not sure what's happened there. And once it reaches 280 knots, we'll see it put the nose down again, I hope, and carry on. And there's open there, so it does manage eventually. I should still say thrust idle, but there we go. So that's what open DES is. It's just the quickest way down by just using idle thrust, and down we go. And then if I want to go down faster, I can wind the speed up, and you'll see it put the nose down more. So that's great. And of course, there is the alternative, which is manage descent mode. So we can push the little arrow up, and it should go. Oh, sorry, that's nav. We want that in nav. We should push the altitude window up. There it goes, and we get DES. Now, DES mode is again the Airbus using its computed vertical profile where it knows what altitude it wants to be. And you can see that on here. It should tell you at LAMSO it wants to be at 13,950 feet. You can see that because of this little number here. At ETPOS it wants to be 10,400 feet. So these are these waypoints here. So it has that in its mind. The real aircraft does show us where we are in relation to that profile, but this one does not, sadly. So that would be nice if they could add that. But yeah, so now it should be using whatever vertical rate it thinks to maintain that profile, which may not be a thrust idle descent. And it's best off if you're going to use managed descent. Managed speed works really well because that's what it is expecting to be flying at. So there we go. So hopefully that's given you some confidence in using the autopilot. So that's just a video to give you hopefully some more confidence in using the Airbus automatics and the autopilot. It is slightly different to a lot of other airliners, so that's why hopefully that's been a bit of use to give you an idea of what exactly it's trying to tell you and what we're trying to achieve by being able to push and pull the controls. I'll be doing more videos covering some other systems, setting up the aircraft and the MCDU, as well as being able to fly some approaches. So if you'd like to see those, do please subscribe, and we'll see you again in another video soon. Thank you very much for watching.